Hey everybody, welcome back to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show for you planned out here today. We got Greg rejoining us, we got Glenn rejoining us. It's been a while, Glenn, so I'm excited to get you back on here. And I have some great videos and a kind of a thought concept that I want to hit off first. But before we get into anything, make sure you all are liking the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff, get your emails whenever we go live, which of course Wednesdays and Fridays. Now, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, put them up in the comment section and we will engage those directly throughout the show. Other than that, let's get some intros. Glenn, you're on top. You want to hit me up? 10, 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from?
My name's Glenn Kirkland, former Canadian Forces soldier and volunteer with the Ukrainian Army, retired real estate agent, and new dad.
I like it. Awesome. Greg, how about yourself?
Yeah, Greg Cooper, out of Saskatoon. I have a podcast, Hive Nation podcast, with my partner JB. We also do coaching, and I'm a judoka and a judo coach as well. So it sums it up.
Outstanding. Shaun, life in the mountains treating you well?
Yeah, everything good here. After this podcast is done, I'm punching off to Kelowna to go pick up my oldest son. I just completed his second year of engineering, bringing him back to Roslyn so he can start his summer job. So frickin' hitting the road.
Nice. That's always fun. Costco. Those are always fun trips. Giovanni jumped in here real quick. Morning, team and guests. Good to see you, buddy. Now, here's the thought construct I wanted to get your guys' opinions on right off the bat. I'm going to tell a little story, and then you guys can give me what you think about it. I've seen a lot of bikers driving around, like pedal bikers driving around town, and there is this kind of back and forth feeling I have with them in that some people utilize, like they're driving. They're on the road. They use turn signals. They act as if they're part of traffic, and then others who will drive along or ride along the sidewalk and utilize the walkways and stuff like that. And the thought construct I want you guys to play with right now is being technically correct versus effectively wrong. So, right, you shouldn't be driving or you shouldn't be riding your bike on the sidewalk, but that is, if you're doing it well enough, then it's not an issue. But also being on the road can be a bit of a technical issue in terms of speed. What are you guys' thoughts on technically correct versus effectively wrong? Shaun, I'm going to come to you first on this one. So what do you think?
Technically correct versus, what was the other term you used there?
Effectively wrong. Yeah.
Okay, check. Okay, so it's called cycling, not pedal biking or pedal riding. Cyclists on the road or on the sidewalk that are in our modern culture rather than the 1700s. I think it comes down to this. You've got two types of individuals. You've created two scenarios, but I think it's two kinds of individuals. There's the individual who looks at the situation in front of them and tries to do the best for everyone that's around them, including themselves. And then there's another individual that just does whatever's good for them. So in those two scenarios, both of those scenarios can be on the road and on the sidewalk. It really depends on the situation that's in front of them. So for myself, as an example, I move in and off the road on the sidewalk here in my own town as I'm heading up to the trails, just like I did yesterday. I'm going to describe precisely what I did. As I was heading up a hill, there were some people walking down the sidewalk. So I hopped off the sidewalk and started riding up the road. But I could hear there was a vehicle behind me coming up on me pretty fast. So as I paralleled the people on the sidewalk, they're immediately to my right now, I bunny hopped back onto the sidewalk and kept on hammering up the sidewalk so I could clear it for the car that was coming up the road. And so my job is not to be a jerk. My job is to interact with society around me as seamlessly as possible, and if given the choice, improve the environment around me. So I don't think it's the scenarios per se, it's the person, the two different kinds of people. I'm going to simplify it as such.
I like it. That's where I was originally thinking that you were going to go, and I like where you went with it. Glenn, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I almost feel like it's doing the right thing. It's never, I shouldn't say it's never, it's many times it's not the easiest thing to do. Like Shaun was saying, he goes out of his way to make sure that the people around him weren't having their being impeded. So he was getting out of their way, and I think that's kind of a good analogy for life. It's doing the right thing, doing good isn't always the easiest thing to do. It's not always the easiest path. So, yeah, exactly what Shaun was saying. He's getting out of people's way. He's making their lives a little easier. He doesn't want to make the people in the car wait for him. He doesn't want to make the people on the sidewalk go walk in the street. So I think that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, thoughts on this?
Situational awareness. Some people have it, some people don't. I saw an example of people who don't yesterday. Driving home from work to go to judo, 2 individuals were on pedal bikes, crossed a main road in Saskatoon and halted traffic. They didn't care what happened to them or to the people around them. I echo Shaun and Glenn's. If I'm on my bike, I do the same thing. I kind of on the road, on the sidewalk when it's necessary, with in mind, yeah, I'm a big guy. I might cause some damage if I get hit by a car, but that car is going to win the battle. So I'm doing what's right for me, trying not to disturb other people, trying to be situational aware.
Absolutely. Now, the reason I bring this up, and I just think it's a great allegory for life, as you guys are saying, but we see this in work, we see this in relationships where somebody has the letter of the law or a technicality stating that they have the right of way, or perhaps a commander is saying, well, this is the way it needs to be done. But experience sometimes tells you that that isn't the only way it can be done, or perhaps there are other ways to do it. So I'm wondering what your guys' thoughts are on how best to manage people like that, perhaps. How best to develop that relationship to a point that they can trust you or trust your knowledge or experience. Shaun, come back to you. What do you think?
So if we're talking about how to recruit someone into being a good human, well, let me know when you figure it out. So I don't have the answer, or really, I probably don't have 10 answers, and all 10 would be different. So I think the best that we can all do is just to set a good example by being the best version of ourselves. And I've been talking about it recently with a few people and thinking about it quite a bit, because someone hit me up several weeks ago, and he sent me a meme from the interwebs, and it was about an individual who's like just doing his level best to be the best version of himself. And people on the sidelines are like shaking their fists and saying, slow down. You don't have to be so great. And he sent it to me and said, dude, this reminds me of you, your relentless pursuit of excellence. And where's the harm in that? I think that, again, now there's 2 types of people. We've got people who want to cooperate, and we've got people who just screw you. And so I'm just trying to cooperate, and I'm also trying to cooperate with myself, being the best version of myself. And I think I'm actively nowadays starting to push a narrative that states, what's your problem, man? What is your problem with me trying to be my best version? What is your problem with people who are trying to go hard, bigger, better, faster, stronger? What's your problem with Greg? Why are you annoyed by Greg? Because Greg's out there kicking ass. So that's the narrative that I'm going to start focusing on over the next few months is, what's your problem, man? Why can't you just let people try harder and be better? Why can't you just let it go? And if you can't let it go, hang on and come along for the ride and become better yourself.
That's a good narrative. Glenn, thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's great. It's almost like as the society looks down on people that try really hard. You know, those guys, you know, you see someone that, you know, maybe is trying to lose weight, working really hard at the gym, and you know, society should be encouraging that. Hard work pays off, and you know, we've all heard that before, and it's so true. When I got into real estate, I had a really good first year, and people were warning me. They're like, Glenn, if you keep selling this, you're going to burn out in a few years. And my first full year in real estate, I was in the top 10 in the province. And then I kept going hard and hard and hard. And right around the time that I was burning out, I retired. So I was okay with that. But I was still having those people, those naysayers, that pot of crabs that, I was getting out there. People are trying to drag you down. Right. And there's examples like that all over the place. And, I think we're, like Shaun was saying, we almost have to, I don't know, I wouldn't ask someone what their problem is. I would maybe just try to lead by an example and encourage those people that need to work really hard to continue to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, thoughts on this?
Yeah. Great point, Shaun. Great point, Glenn. Totally agree with everything you guys said. And an example that comes to my mind is I recently started working with Adaptive Sports Saskatchewan, wheelchair basketball here. Got a pair of ice hockey stick here. And it's heightened my awareness of, people setting good examples and doing their best and just being good people, where an adaptive athlete, their hardest thing to do isn't the sport they're playing. It's everything else. Everything else is now a task. And nobody looks down at them and go, oh, why are they working hard? Paralympics, like blah, blah, blah. Nobody will ever say that out loud. But to a person who's able-bodied, like my roommate, he's like, man, why are you out, rucking every day? Why are you out doing this? I'm like, because I can. If we can show people what's possible, and we could show people that by doing good things and by working hard and by setting good examples, you can achieve greatness. And I see that all the time in the athletes I get to work with, Olympians or, new athletes coming up, that they're here to work and they're here to set an example. Hey, I'm riding a wheelchair now. That's fine. I'm still going to set an example for everybody who's come with me, who's going to come after me, to work hard and be good people. Because at the end of the day, if you're not good and you don't have good intentions, are you going to be part of a team? Are people going to want to work with you? Probably not. Almost impossible to teach that, but it's amazing when you get to be surrounded by it and just echo that to everybody else out there.
That is an amazing feeling when you're part of a group of people that all want the team to win more than they want to be the winner, which I think is key. Shaun, what do you got?
I'm glad that the conversation is kind of going this way, because a couple of days ago I watched a video, and it's a guy, he's running. I forget his call sign on Instagram. I don't even know how I bumped into it. No one sent it to me, just kind of popped up in my feed. And he was just plonking along, and he was talking about how he's going to go run 20 kilometers or something like that, is long Saturday or Saturday run or whatever the case is. And when I saw that, and it kind of felt like initially when I bumped into this guy, he was kind of flaring out. That's what I thought. And this is what I said in my head: big deal, pal. My wife's out there right now running 30 kilometers. And so that was my initial response, which was a jerk initial response by me, because I didn't understand the guy's full spiel. So his deal is this, that he's like a big guy. And I think that he said when he was in that video running, he was about 285 pounds. And he's a pretty good runner. Like, he competes. I'm not going to say he's competitive, but he competes. And so he's a big guy out there kicking ass. And as I watched 3 or 4 of his videos to get a better sense of him, I bumped into this video, and man, I should have sent it to you if I would have thought the conversation was going this way. But here's what he says. And it goes on for a while, so I'm going to paraphrase. Hey, everyone out there, I really appreciate you offering up advice and congratulating me and things like that. But here's the deal. I'm a big guy, and everyone always comes up to me while I'm running in a race or out training, and they say, you run really well, ... for a big guy. You're really fast for a big guy. Good for you, out here kicking ass as a big guy. And so he says he gets told this all the time, and it bums him out, because it highlights that he's a big guy, and he doesn't want to be reminded that he's a big guy. Now, I'm going to pause for a sec and comment on that. I think that that's kind of like not a great way to observe yourself and be bummed out about your reality. Your reality is your reality. Get right with it. You can't will away your weight. You can only work at it and get rid of it if that's what you're focused on. So accept the fact that you're a big guy and that you're out there running as a big guy. So with that out of the way, he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it when people say that. Now, I would have been a guy that would have seen him out on the trail and thought, man, good on you. You're a freaking big guy kicking ass. That's a good pace, pal. Good for you. You're passing me as a big guy. That's what I would have said. Now, he doesn't like it. And so as I thought about it, I've lost count of how many times I've said that to people out on the trail, whether they're a mega athlete or not. As I'm riding up on them, I'll usually say, hey, man, good job on the trail. And I'm genuinely patting them on the back and trying to be encouraging. Genuinely. There's no malice in it at all. However, there's people out there on the trail or in life that it seems to be almost malicious to a tiny degree in their mind, though that's not the way I'm delivering it. That's kind of how they're hearing it a little bit. And I've just, over the last couple of days, I've thought, man, I've got to get a grip on how I approach these things. I've got to understand that what I think is an attaboy is not an attaboy for, I don't know, 1% of the planet. So the language that we use, I guess, is pretty important. And again, I have been reminded that my desire to congratulate someone on them kicking ass sometimes doesn't work in their mind.
That's a very interesting point. I'm going to go, Greg, what do you think?
Yeah. Again, since I started working with adaptive athletes, that exact thing that Shaun just brought up has like heightened to the next level. I've gotten the opportunity to play some wheelchair basketball and wheelchair rugby with some of the team members here, and it's incredible. Like inherently, I'm looking at them like they're amazing athletes, because no matter what their implement is, a lot of these athletes are wheelchair bound. That's just what they're on. That's fine. I'm playing basketball with these athletes and they're blowing by me. They're turning so fast. And I'm, they're all looking at me like, oh, this is an athletic guy. I'm okay. But how impressive they are in their own right, in their own field, in their own vehicle, it transcends their circumstance. If you're good, you're good. And seeing it through that lens where it's none of them look at each other and go, we're less. It's like, no, we're still athletes. We're capable and we're going to find the way. And their ability to adapt to what's out in front of them is second to none. And you see it in all facets of life, but people that can, sorry, I'm kind of repetitive here, but people that can look past what's right in front of them and their circumstance and just do good work, it's unbeaten. To have that trait and to see it every day now, it's honestly awe-inspiring, because they were blowing me out of the park. I looked like a fool on the court.
Well, I think that's also practice a little bit, like knowing how to use a chair properly, but I definitely see how that play out. Glenn, thoughts on this?
Yeah, maybe I'll kind of expand on what Greg was saying there. And kind of Shaun, like, I think people's mentality too is skewed when people give them positive feedback. I would rather encourage someone and be their motivation, them get kind of like, oh, why is he saying that? And be that motivation to keep going for that, 1% than that not say anything. Like, I did mountain man in the military, and I had a plan. It was, Al Verzile. I don't know if that name rings a bell to anyone, but he was a mountain man guru. And he came up, and I was a long distance runner. And even though I wasn't built like it, and he took me under his wing and he said, every single hill going up, you walk it. And I said, okay. So I did mountain man. And within the first 500 meters, there was a hill. Well, I'm going, well, I'm going to listen to Al. And I started walking up this hill. And I had people running past me going, oh, don't walk now, you can do it, and trying to be encouraging and being genuine. And all I thought to myself is, I'll see you at the finish line. I'll get you a cup of water, as because I'll be done before you. And I did. I finished in the top 10, and it was because I take what they said. Was I angry about it? I don't think I was angry, but I definitely used that as motivation. And I think people that get encouragement that don't like it, like that big fella you're talking about, Shaun, I think their mindset almost needs to change too, because people need to embrace positivity. And it's an Al Verzile, legend, mountain man legend. I'll leave it at that.
Love it. What do you got, John?
I do have one more thing because it's relevant to this moment. And yesterday I was talking with the Slavage Commandage in a Zoom meeting. We chirped at each other for about an hour. It was redonk. I mean, it was a good laugh. And so at some point he said, "Hey, listen, Alex and I have been thinking about maybe getting some mountain bikes just based on the videos that you're putting out." I was like, dude, that'd be so freaking rad. Can you imagine you're ripping around the trail with your bionic leg? And so we're going back and forth. And he said, yeah, it'd probably be hard. And I said, hey, listen, here's the deal. I think it might have been my first 24-hour solo mountain bike race, or maybe my second, but it was out in Canmore. I do remember that. And I remember being out on the course, and there was this dude, and he had one leg. And he was racing as a 24-hour soloist with one leg, just pedaling one crank arm, just pedaling on one pedal, obviously with no other leg. And so I remember passing this guy in the middle of the night, and it was heinous, like Canmore in the middle of the night on that course in bad weather. It's bonkers, man. And so I remember passing this guy, and I specifically remember stating to him, dude, freaking awesome. Keep smashing. Like I was trying to be encouraging, congratulating him, recognizing the fact that, like, I only probably knew a handful of humans who could do what he was doing at that time. That's the amount of one-legged mega athletes I'd met in my life at that point. And I wanted to let him know that, like, he didn't know me, but I wanted to let him know from me, he gets my full respect. So now here's an interesting point. After I talked with Seb yesterday and said that, I was thinking, yeah, but how would that work with the big guy out there running when I pat him on the back and he doesn't like it? Now I'm screwed with the hindsight memory of, man, maybe that was a jerk thing to say to the one-legged 24-hour solo mountain bike racer. Maybe he's bummed out for all these years. And so, like, I don't want to have to work through my encyclopedia of good job, mans, to determine whether they were cool things to say or not in that moment. All I can do now at this point is moving forward, pay a little more attention to when to say attaboy and when to say pick up the pace, I guess. So
I've been having this thought while you guys have been talking here, and I think what it comes down to is the comparison. And I think this is the key point of it, is that the issue would be, as you run past the big guy, hey, you're running pretty well for a big guy, right? Versus, awesome, dude, keep running, right? And I think that's where the line gets drawn in terms, for me personally, because if you're comparing anything to anybody at any point in time, that's where, you can get into misunderstandings and different interpretations and all that kind of stuff. But when I'm out on a ruck march or, I'm working on the mats, I'm very keen to only ever use positive language. I never use the comparative portion afterwards, which is for a big guy. Wow, you roll pretty good for a girl. Like that, it's the for a duh that makes it, I think, in my mind, offensive. But what do you guys think? Glenn?
Yeah, I was just going to tell a little story about that. A lot of people know I was hit with a rocket in Afghanistan in 2008, and everyone inside the vehicle was killed except myself. And there was a soldier on top of the vehicle. He lost his leg. I was inside the vehicle. I was lit on fire, peppered with shrapnel. I had to relearn how to walk. I was in a wheelchair for a while, and I made a goal. I was going to run the half marathon in Brandon, Manitoba within a year. And I started training with Master Corporal Adam Sear, who was an unbelievable soldier. He would train. He'd ride his bike. So I had lots of damage to my eyes. I had multiple eye surgeries, and I used to have to wear an eye patch. So we ran this half marathon in Brandon, Manitoba, and he's riding his bike with his, bionic leg there, and I'm running next to him on the bike with my eye patch, and a little kid runs out and with his dad, and his dad's like, great job, guys, and I needed that motivation. And the little kid goes, "Look, Dad, it's pirates." Because there I am with an eye patch, and there's a soldier on a bike with a bionic leg, and we both kind of like, I couldn't stop, because if I stopped, it would start again. That's for sure. But I'm standing there going, I can never stop now. I have to keep running. I'm a pirate. Like, what would a pirate do in this situation? Pirate go kick butt. So I just kept going, and I ended up. I usually leave the last part of the story out, but I ended up winning it for my age category, and but what I normally don't tell people is I ended up being the only one in my age category, but I still finished number one.
That is amazing. I love it. Greg, you got any thoughts on this?
That's fantastic. I do, and I'm going to use judo as the example. The puzzle of communication, especially to young athletes, but this goes in any walk of life. When you're talking to somebody, you first have to figure out how they receive that communication you're giving them. What kind of person are they? Are they analytical? Are they outspoken? Are they a leader? Et cetera, et cetera. And I have athletes from 5 to 85, and some need that constant positive. Yeah, you're doing great. You're doing great. It's not quite great, but it helps them out. I have other athletes where if I tell them, "Oh, really good," they look at me and they go, "No, it wasn't. Tell me the truth." It's like, okay. So it's that constant puzzle, and it's a large task, especially the more people you communicate with. But I have strategies I use to kind of figure out, okay, is this person do they need the pat on the back, or do they need me to be blunt and go, "Look, you're turning in, you're too loose, you didn't have good grips, you're never going to throw somebody with that in the competition field. If you're going competitive," which in this case this athlete is, it's like, that's not going to work when it's real. It works when it's controlled and it's drilling. But yeah, it's just that constant puzzle of how can I communicate effectively with this person to give them the best opportunity to progress and grow. And it's a puzzle I play every day, and I love to play it.
Yeah, it is. It's a fun puzzle to work on. Shaun, you got any additional thoughts on this?
Just that I'm glad Greg raised that point, because he's right on point. I mean, the ability to communicate in the moment appropriately to achieve the outcome that is expected or required or is mandatory for both parties. I mean, it's a nuanced thing with hyper granularity. If you want to refine it down to a razor sharp edge, you've got to apply granularity in that moment. But for other circumstances where a person doesn't have much nuance on the subject, who doesn't have much understanding of where they're standing in that moment, it can be really binary, yes or no, up or down, in or out, left or right. You can keep it super simple. But when it comes time for the non-granular comparative attaboy, chances right, I mean, you got to leave out the good job for a girl. But then what do? You shorten it down to good job, and then you move on and start scrubbing the mats. I mean, like, to me, that isn't enough. There has to be more. Good job is like a non-statement in my world. It's as casual as the wind. There's nothing in it there. How many times did you hear good job yesterday? Probably several. And so it has very little meaning without the follow-on refinement. And to Greg's point, that's where the granularity of the moment of a good coach or a good person or a good human who can communicate well, that's where it becomes important.
Yeah. I was actually just watching a video yesterday, and I didn't pull it up. I didn't save it for some reason, but it was more along the lines of when kids bring you something or they want to show you something, and the answer, instead of "Hey, this looks great" or "This is a great picture" or whatever it is "What do you think about it?" And I know Shaun does this to me all the time, where he just takes it and turns it back on you, wherever you're trying to whatever you're trying to do. So I've started to use that a little bit in my jiu-jitsu and with my kids, in terms of just putting it back on them when they ask for feedback. I say, "How do you feel about it? What do you think about it?" And see where it goes. Because if they're just like, "I love it. It was the greatest piece of artwork I ever done." Cool. That's awesome. I'm glad you feel that way. Or if they think they need some more work on it, cool. That's also good. But it is a fine line between motivating someone through, I guess the fine line really is on the person, on whether or not they accept that as a effective tool or not. Let's ask then this. As a new coach or a new father, Glenn, how are you managing dealing with people that don't work with the way you communicate? What do you think, Glenn? Coming to you first.
I think, well, we have to be as adaptive with our communication and with talking as other people do with listening. And I was trained as a hostage negotiator and crisis intervener out of the Vancouver Justice Institute when I was still in the military. And the start of this course, there was like 40 people. And the classes kept getting weeded down because like most of it was police officers on it. They wanted to fix everyone's problem. And they wanted to do more talking than they did listening. And the final people that finished the course, they were the ones that were asking the questions. They were the ones that were adapting each conversation to that particular person, speaking on their language, speaking to their strengths, forming their words to mimic what the other person is talking. If I'm having a conversation, like I train police applicants to pass their physical test right now. If I have someone coming in, they talk to me, they show up and they're listening to the recruiters, they're wearing a shirt and tie before they come in and see me. I'm going to be more formal with them because I know they're going to be formal with me. If I have someone more, casual coming in with, shorts and a t-shirt, ready to run this, ready to go kick some butt, I'll be talking, hyping them up, getting ready to go, So I think we have to be a little bit of a chameleon also, right? Adapting to our situation when we're communicating with people. And, there isn't one answer for communication. We're communicating without using more than just our words, our body language, our eye contact, everything. So yeah, we need to adapt to what the other person needs. And that's for listening and talking.
Love it. Greg, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I really like how Glenn talked about, adaptively listening and communicating to those individuals. The thing about as a new coach, I'll go from that side. As a new coach, communicating with people that aren't going to listen to you or don't communicate the way you do, it kind of comes down to, you have a culture that you like. You've created a culture as a coach. This is the people that you surround yourself with, and you can't please everybody. And at the end of the day, a coach is only going to work with the people they can work with, that will listen to them, that are coachable, that will be also able to adapt to how that coach is communicating to them. Now, the example I'll use is most coaches have teammates, other coaches that they can lean on. We see it all the time. Female athletes in particular don't always like female coaches or otherwise. So if an athlete doesn't like communicating with, a male coach, well, hey, if you don't want me to be your main coach, here's our female coach, communicate with her. So there's different strategies you can use there, but it's almost impossible to communicate with everybody. So you just have to kind of pick and choose where you're going to apply that.
That's a great point. Shaun, thoughts on this?
Yeah, to Greg's point, we all have finite time and we're supposed to use it wisely. And I believe that's what he's referencing. And to Glenn's point, mentioning the hostage negotiation tactics, that's something I'd like to build off of to include what Chance started us off with. And that was when someone walks up to him, maybe one of his kids, and says, hey, blah, 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 art piece. And Chance replies back with, well, what do you like about it? Or what is it, etc. And then the follow-on is, whenever you get that answer, why? It's the what, and then it's the why. Now, why is why so important? Because here's my deal. An athlete or a non-athlete, any person who's standing in front of me, I definitely don't have time to listen to their entire life story. I just don't. And if I'm a negotiator, in that moment, I don't have the time to learn everything about whether that person had a dog or not when they were a kid. Here's what I do have to do in both of those moments is understand how their mind works. I don't have time to understand the crisis situation for 74 hours. I might only have 74 minutes. I might only have 7 minutes. And in all that time, I've got to understand their mind. I'm trying to learn how their mind works so that I can work with that mind. I'm not trying to work with their dog that they didn't have when they were 6. I'm trying to work with the mind of the person who's immediately in front of me in that moment. And every mind is different. Every mind works differently. So it's my job to understand what kind of a mind is in front of me so then I can work with that. Now, how do you work with minds? You've got to work with a lot of them to understand how to work with them. You can't work with one. You can't work with 10 and have it all figured out. You've got to work with thousands. You've got to understand thousands of different minds. Now, we see people when we're walking down the sidewalk. I see minds. I'm not saying like I see minds hovering down the sidewalk. Obviously, I see human beings. But the human being is just the sensory object. The brain is the device that interprets our sensors, touch, smell, all of that good stuff. As the person's walking down the sidewalk, all of that sensory device that they are as a body, it's their mind that I'm communicating with. I'll see them walking down the sidewalk. I'll read all the body language. I'll read their eyes. I'll read all of the things. I'll understand them as a sensory organism. But it's the mind that drives all of that. How they view the world, not with their Mark 1 eyeballs, but how they view the world with their mind. The mind is the overlayer of how they run their sensory program. So if I can understand their mind, I can understand their backstory. I don't need to know their backstory. I just need to know how their mind works. And how do you understand a mind? Again, you've got to work with a lot of them. And you've got to think of them as a mind that you're working with. Like today, start thinking that way. And maybe a year from now, you'll be able to start working with minds. I hope that makes sense.
I'm liking where this is going. Glenn, you got any additional thoughts on this?
No, I think everyone's kind of really explained everything really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, you got any additional points?
No, Shaun nailed it. Glenn nailed it. That was, fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I have a number of videos laid out here, and they kind of play into this, but it's on the opposite spectrum of it. So initially, when we were talking about, the big guy running down the trail and him taking offense to somebody saying, "Oh, good job, well done," with the comparison, all that stuff. I want to just touch on those that are, taking a bit of a malicious line to it, as Shaun was talking about earlier. So I'm going to put this video on here, and it's just from the legend Bruce Lee, and I think it touches on it, but we'll get your thoughts on it right after. Here we go.
Ready. Right now. Like everyone else, you want to learn the way to win, but never to accept the way to lose. To accept defeat, to learn to die is to be liberated from it. So when tomorrow comes, you must free your ambitious mind and learn the art of dying.
Bam. And the reason I bring that up is because earlier we were talking about crabs in the bucket, and I think that's kind of along the lines of what we're getting at here. Greg, thoughts on this?
The one statement that really stuck out to me was you need to free your ambitious mind. I love that little snippet there, because when we're looking at, if winning is what you're after, if that's your goal, but you put everything else aside, all of your friends, everything, and you go, get out of my way, I have one set goal. Now there's a point to, on the athlete side, you have to be selfish if you're truly wanting to, go to the Olympics, world champion, be highly competitive, but you still need a team around you. Judo, again, is the example, individual sport. I want to win. I want to beat everybody in my division. I want to be number one in Canada and then go elsewhere. But if I'm a jerk and I do not communicate well with my teammates, I'm a bad training partner, I show up, I think I'm better, my ego gets in the way, I'm never going to get there. The coaches will not give me the opportunities. My training partners won't want to show up, because when I'm there, I'm just beating them up, and it's all for the wrong reasons. The need and the drive to win is truly important in all aspects of life, in my opinion. But you still need to be aware that you need people, you need support, you need to carry yourself properly in that ambition to win.
I like that. Glenn, thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's that age-old tale of it's the journey, it's not the destination. And I've failed at so many things in my life, and I wouldn't consider myself a failure. And it because I keep trying new things, keep going, keep pushing myself. I'm always, and we talked about this at the Inspire event with Satch in Motion. I'm constantly trying to reinvent myself, and for every success I've ever had, I've had 25 failures. I feel like I've lived a life like Rocky. I keep knocking someone down, but I keep getting up. And maybe I'm just too stupid to quit and find something more casual or more relaxing to do, but I won't stop. And I have so much inspiration that I surround myself with, and not just positive, good people, but people that have done good, amazing things. And like when I do the police training, we have people that come, they have failed absolutely miserably the first few times, where I joked to them saying I could time you with a sundial, when they're running this, but they show up again the next week, and they keep showing up, and you're seeing that progress, and they don't quit, and then they get hired, and they're police officers. And I'm going, that's exactly the position that someone that doesn't quit should be in. And I'm inspired by them. Hopefully they get inspired by some of my failures and successes, and we can take those moments and build on them. And I've listened to that clip so many times in my life. It's amazing. And especially when he talks about dying, life is all about living, but then the end goal for everyone is that they pass away, right? So you got to make the most of it. And we all know what's going to happen in the end. So you do have to prepare for failure, but learn by it.
Love that. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, I do. So free yourself of ambition, and I suppose got to keep it in theme with the collective and the goal mine, with the universal answer of, yeah, cool, bro, but that all depends. And so that depends is really important in this aspect, because not everyone works the same. And so not everyone has ambition. Not everyone wants to free themselves of it. Not everyone, et cetera, et cetera. We're all very unique in this sense. So Here's what I thought when I listened to that clip. Free yourself of ambition. My thought was, why? Why, Bruce? So to your point, Chance, when someone comes up with, what do you think of my art? What about my art? The next response should be, why do you like your art? Not what is it? Why? Why? Use the leading question of why to get deeper, further into the subject. So free yourself of ambition. Why, Bruce? What were you trying to say there? Now, I can't ask him that, obviously, but that's what I would have said immediately after that sentence. I wouldn't have hung on his every word with my jaw open, waiting for the next sentence. I would have interjected and said, why? What's your point? Where are you going with this? Explain it further, deeper, wiser. Where did you get that from? Where are you taking it? All of the things. Why? That's what we're all supposed to do. We shouldn't just accept wisdom. We should dive deeper into the wisdom by asking why. So my thought is this: free yourself of ambition. What are we freeing ourselves from? The pursuit of ambition, or shedding ambition, and somehow that's going to enlighten us in our future path? What was Bruce saying in that moment? I suppose it doesn't really matter because I can't ask him now, but I can ask myself through his own words. And what it means to me, free yourself of ambition, is probably different than my neighbor or the guy in the city across the way. We all have our different interpretations of it. So I suppose I'm not going to give my opinion on free yourself of ambition. I'm going to state that we should all be asking ourselves the why of these sentences.
That is a great question to ask, and I think I have an answer. Not my personal answer, but I have another video. I'm going to put it up here, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on how it applies to what Bruce just said. So here we go.
You've got. They're not jealous of how you got it. No comedians are jealous of how I got it. No one sits there and goes, oh, I wish I could sit for 10 hours a day and write jokes. Oh, they think I want to play that venue, or I'd love to have that Netflix special, but they don't sit there going, well, what pathology would you need in your head to write that many one-liners and to care that much about it? Who would you have to be to do that? And we're all chasing something, right? I think we're chasing imposter syndrome. I think imposter syndrome's got a bad reputation, and it's great. You should feel it every 18 months. As you level up, you should feel like, do I belong here? Don't feel comfortable. Lovely. As soon as you start to feel comfortable, you need to push yourself a little bit further.
Now, in my mind, I think that's the ambitious mind trap that Bruce Lee was talking about, was the desire for the end versus the actual journey, as Glenn alluded to earlier. But what do you guys think? Greg, coming to you.
Yeah, that's a great follow-up video, and it's a look into, the journey. I kind of alluded to that with my answer, my interpretation of that Bruce Lee video. But the example that comes to mind is right from this weekend. There was a judo training camp we participated in, and Judo BC, Judo Alberta, Judo Saskatchewan, Judo Yukon. We had an Olympian guest coach, and there's some hard randori, like sparring rounds. Now, I'm not a high-level athlete anymore. I was briefly when I was younger, but I'm going to try to make a comeback. I'm going to try to be competitive in judo again. So I went up against a lot of the guys that I'll be fighting in the near future, and I got checked. Big smack in the face. They're better. They're faster. Their judo's a little bit better. I have the end goal of I want to compete, and of course I want to win, but now I need to focus on what's in front of me. The focus on what does it take to get there. Sitting down, I can't remember the comedian's name, but the comedian, 10 hours of writing jokes. That's what it takes. It's going to the gym. It's doing your judo practice. It's doing, your business courses, whatever it takes. But people don't ever see that. And we talked about comparison earlier in the podcast, where, comparison could be a killer, because if somebody's looking at the person that, in the case of the video, who got the show at New York at times at Madison Square Garden, who has the Netflix special. But what did it take to get there? People fail often to ask themselves, what did that person do to get there? How much work did they put in? Who did they work with? Did they have mentors? Did they sacrifice? Of course they did. The answer is yes to all of that stuff. They work hard. They had people around them helping them that are smarter than them, giving them advice. They put in hours and hours of work to get that small, brief moment of, wow, I made it. And going back to my judo example that happened to me this weekend, it's those brief moments of success that people chase for and look at, but then they don't realize after those brief moments of success, most high performers go 5 seconds later, well, that was great. Now what? And it doesn't last. They don't relish in it. It's momentarily, and then poof, it's gone like smoke. So people really need to view that lens of all of this opposed to that little tiny sliver of success that gets shown to the public.
Yeah, absolutely. Glenn, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I really like that clip. I'll first talk about that Bruce Lee one. When Bruce Lee talks about ambition, like shedding yourself of ambition, I almost felt like when I first heard that, I thought ambition was not actually doing something, but like wanting to do something, like that drive. And so when he said shed yourself of that, I took it as go do it. Don't be ambitious. Don't want to do this. Just go do it. So when I'm listening to that comedian, again, I forget his name also, but he's awesome. I never would have thought of a comedian as a hardworking person. And then he's talking about how hard it was. And we all think about, events in our life that we've done and all the workup and training and physical exertions and sacrifice you've had to make for relationships and especially in the military, right? Or first responders. Like I don't know how many of my friends have spent Christmases and birthdays away from their families because they're doing something bigger and better. And when you talked about imposter syndrome, man, I think so many of us battle with that our whole lives. When I went to Ukraine, I was never a military instructor in Canada. But when I got there, I knew what I had to do. So I knew I had to reinvent myself as that military instructor. I had to go back, and just dig and do everything I could to make a big impact in people's life. And that took a lot of work. I remember I was talking to Shaun once when I was teaching some Ukrainian snipers, and I asked him, like, do you got any advice? What do you got for me? And Shaun gave me some great advice and did a video for these guys. It was awesome. But then at the same time, I wasn't just asking Shaun. I asked all my sniper buddies to send me all the PAMs I could possibly get. I put in so much work and so much effort, all for a class that all for teaching these guys that when they sat down, they thought it was just so easy for me to do. And that was because of that hard work and determination that I would do and reinventing myself. And, maybe a little bit of that imposter syndrome. I was fighting it because I knew what I had to do. I'll leave it at that.
Love it. Shaun, thoughts?
Couple of thoughts. One is because Glenn has got it fresh in my head. Speaking about Vancouver, the presentation, A Night to Inspire, where 9 guest speakers all presented. And so my presentation, as Glenn knows, about 10 seconds into my presentation, the electronics hammered in. The presentation disappeared and I had to pivot in a heartbeat and go in a completely different direction in real time, kind of just in flow mode, trying to do my best in the moment. Now, how did I manage to do that? It's not because I was born a good speaker or I was born with all of this knowledge. It's a freaking 60 years of work, a body of work that every single day I'm freaking hammering on. Why am I hammering on it? Because of my imposter syndrome. It's a lever, man. It's a tool. It's fuel to keep me pushing forward, to not settling with mediocrity, to pursue excellence. Whether I ever achieve excellence or not is neither here nor there. I'm a hunter and a gatherer, I suppose. So during my presentation, the day before, all of my material was memorized. I could have given that presentation with my eyes closed and upside down. And so why is that? Did I need to prepare that much? Probably not, but I did prepare a lot because I'm a freaking professional. And there's a wild difference between a professional and an amateur mindset. Being a professional and being an amateur doesn't mean that you look different. It means that you act different. It means that you think different. It means that you purport yourself differently. It's not going to make you taller. It's not going to make you faster. It's going to make you operate differently, though. And so, as a professional, as a true professional throughout your life, you will always take the time to prepare to the maximum for whatever it is you're just about to step into. Just as Glenn described, for him to teach that course overseas, he could have probably taught it without being prepared. And it would have been a slapdash mediocre effort that they would have fully appreciated and would have loved him for it. But they love him more for it because they know that it was an amazing preparation. It was an amazing delivery. Anyone who's in the game, even just a tiny bit in an audience, can see when someone is an amateur and when someone is a professional. And I'll always give my nod to a professional. I'll barely recognize an amateur.
That is a fantastic point. Now, we are getting close to an hour now. I have one more video, but I'm going to save it for later because there's just not quite enough time. You might have to unmute yourself if you want to talk to me.
Let's go for it. Let's hit that video.
All right, let's do it. All right, here we go. Let's. It does apply. So I just so you guys know, here we go.
The man who never fell has no glory. The man who fell and got back up, that's where his glory is. The man who fell 20 times and got up 21 times, that man has even greater glory.
Wow.
That man has more courage, way more courage than the guy who was so strong from birth that he never fell. There's no glory in that.
And I really love this quote myself, I really love that line. And Glenn, I think, alluded to it earlier as well. Let's start with that, Glenn. Thoughts on that video?
Yeah, just exactly kind of what I was talking about before. It's you get people that face adversity, and to me, I just feel like they're forged in fire. You know, we talk about samurais and warriors. Well, the best swords are ones that are absolutely forged through hard steel, you know, flaming, you know, scalding hot fire. And that's the best steel out there. You get anyone that's gone through adversity that gets up at the end of the day, they're going to be a stronger person for it. And I feel like I have. Sometimes people have told me like my life is like a movie, and I always wonder. I'm like, oh, is it going to be an action movie? Is it going to be a comedy? Is it going to be a horror movie? Like, is this like a bad movie? Is this a sad movie? Is it a happy movie? You know, but no matter what it is, and no matter what, I keep getting up, I keep going, I keep doing things, and I know so many other people out there that are doing this. And look at Satch from Satch in Motion. You know, this guy he is not built like a runner, and this guy is going to be running across Canada. And is he doing it for himself? Not even close. He's doing this to raise money for first responders. And I think, you know, that's the epitome of getting back up. And there's going to be days where, you know, he's not going to want to run, and he's going to run. And I know it, and we all support him. I know Shaun's like nodding his head because he's like, yeah, this guy's, his feet are going to be bleeding. He knows this. He's going to keep going. And that clip is fantastic.
Absolutely. Greg, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I got to shout out Isaac Miller because he did this quote, and I'm going to paraphrase a bit, but we had him on the podcast a few months ago, and he said, I've been blessed with a lot of life in a little bit of time. And ever since he said that to me, it just plays rent free in my head, because that's me. I don't have the experience that any of the gentlemen in this room with me here do. I'll be 26 in June, but I've been allotted a lot of experiences, and I've been allotted a lot of failures. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've had the right team, the right mentors, and the right mindset to learn and grow from those. And I see it time and time again on the mats. I go back to judo. It's just the best example in my opinion. It's like when an individual has been beaten, it's 10 minutes straight of practice of sparring rounds, and they keep getting back up with a smile on their face. They keep getting back up with a smile on their face, because they're learning these micro lessons in each of these failures, when they get thrown. And I look at it a lot like that, where if an individual has never failed, one, I'd probably consider them a liar, because I don't think anybody's perfect. If somebody out there who's never failed at something, please send me a message. I'd love to pick your brain, but that just doesn't exist. And in failures, when we learn our best lessons. Man, I just ran into a brick wall. How do I never do that again? How can I break through that brick wall? How can I grow? How can I think different? How can I look at things different? How can I educate myself so that I can never have to face that hardship again? And that's not always going to work out, but failure is just such an important teacher in life. And it's something that I'm very grateful for. Every time I fail, I'm honestly happy about it.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Shaun, thoughts on this?
I'm going to combine both videos. So the comedian was talking about how he, no one knows about the days where he was spending 10 hours writing one-liners. I know lots of people that do that. Lots of people who do 20 hours a day doing these kind of things. It just so happens that my circle of friends are hard chargers. They're not spending 1 hour writing jokes. They're spending 27 hours in a 24-hour day writing jokes. That's the kind of people I like to hang out with. People who push the pace, because they make me push the pace. And so here's the deal. If he was writing 10 hours worth of jokes every day, he didn't have to, and no one does. We all self-select our velocity, and it's the velocity that defines us. So he could have written 1 hour a day or 10 hours a day. He chose 10. What does that mean? It means that he gets to his outcome faster, his self-visualized end state. He's approaching it faster than 1 hour a day. But the best part is, when you're doing 10 hours a day, you might face 10 failures a day versus 1 hour a day where you only face one failure a day. The faster your velocity, the more mistakes made in a shorter period of time. It's a doubling down effect. You want more failures? Dial up your velocity. And so that now moves into the second video, where failure is important. Fall down, get back up. Fall down, get back up. Last night, before I went to bed, I watched a video about AI. It was the CEO of NVIDIA. If you don't know what NVIDIA is, boy, you better get with the program. The CEO of NVIDIA was talking about the future of AI and supercomputing and all of that good stuff. He was presenting to Stanford University, and there were questions asked of him. And at one point, a question was asked, and he didn't quite sigh, but he did one of these. And then he launched into it. And what he said, and I'm going to paraphrase him now. What he said was this: Stanford University creates some incredible minds, some people who think amazing things, who are highly educated, who know a lot. But you're not going to do very well in this industry. And here's why. Because you're all really smart. You probably haven't suffered to get here. You came from families, and I'm paraphrasing him now, but as he stated, you came from families that put you on a course to Stanford where it's been hard work, but it's been privileged work. You haven't faced enough pain and suffering, and that is a direct quote from him. You all need to face way more pain and suffering the moment that you leave Stanford. And then he stated, in my company, NVIDIA, in nearly every meeting, I laugh at people's problems and say, you just haven't faced enough pain and suffering. Then finally he states, and that's where you learn how to run a good company. That's where you learn to run a good XYZ. You need pain and suffering to move out of mediocrity. Those are his words, not mine. And so that's right from the CEO of NVIDIA, directly to Stanford grads who think that they're large and in charge. But they're not. No one is until you've fallen down 1,000 times and get up 1,001 times. Falling down once and getting up once isn't enough. It has to be at scale. And if you want to get to scale, you've got to dial up velocity. And what is your velocity? If it's not 11 out of 10, then what's holding you back?
Man, you really need to get back to those mic drops, or at least toss them. Those are freaking wicked. Well, with that, we are now over an hour, and I want to get some final thoughts on anything we've gone over, because we've covered a lot of ground here, and I think we've left some really, really good information for anybody that's watching. Greg, let's start with you. Any final thoughts? Anything still bubbling in the back of your brain? What do you got?
Yeah, I'm just happy that my imposter syndrome is alive and well. Every time I'm in this room, I get it. And to shout out Seb, like Seb talked about this a lot, where, high performers have imposter syndrome. And I look at the guys that are in this panel and the information they put out, and it's just incredible. And I'm going to have to rewatch this when it gets released, because the amount of takeaways here, just incredible. So, I don't need to add any more. What's been said has been fantastic.
Awesome. Well, it is live already, so you can watch it as soon as you're done. You're good to go whenever you got time. Glenn, final thoughts? Anything still bubbling in the back of your brain?
No, my brain's wrapped around changing diapers and baby cooing and whatever. So this is my downtime right now.
Well, enjoy it. Enjoy it while you can, right? That's the key.
Sure.
I could hear the little blurbs in the background as you were talking, and I saw your eyes kind of flit off to one side. And I was like, yeah, I remember what that's like. Shaun, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It didn't sound like cooing to me, though. To wrap things up, I suppose we have covered quite a bit of material, and it is worth a re-listen, of course. So to sum it all up, I just keep it simple, and that is to build off of the most recent videos that you just put up, Chance. Fall down, get back up at a velocity that you don't have time to look at the blood on your knees. Let them bleed and ignore them, because you're going to fall down again 15 seconds later. Just keep on hammering. Don't worry about the scuffs. They'll scab up. You'll be proud of them someday. Just keep on going.
I like it. I don't think I can. I'm going to try to sum this up. Basically, what I got out of this was positivity without comparison, and consistent effort regardless of outcome, I think is the two big pieces that I got out of this, and it was just been fantastic. So as a final send off, I just want to say thank you, Greg, Glenn, Shaun. Awesome conversation today. This has been wicked. So as we all continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see y'all next week. Chimo.